You called her crooked Hillary, said you wanted to get in jail. Your people in your audiences kept saying, lock him up.
Yeah. Well, she
do you
did,
want to
she did
put
some
it,
bad things. I mean, she
I
did
know,
some
but
bad
a
things.
special prosecutor? You
I don't
think
want to
you might...
hurt them. I don't want to hurt them. They're good people. I don't want to hurt them.
President-elect Donald Trump, during that post-election interview with 60 Minutes, not really offering a definitive answer on whether or not he might appoint a special prosecutor to look into possible criminal wrongdoing by Hillary Clinton. To talk more about that and other subjects, we're very pleased to welcome in former New York Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik. Bernie, of course, is also the author of the book From Jailer to Jailed. And we should note for the record, he was one of the first people to get on board the Trump train. He was a supporter of Mr. Trump's early on, and he joins us today from Newsmax, Washington. As we welcome you, Bernie, we remind those watching that they can get in on our conversation at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. Now, on the campaign trail, as was referenced, Bernie, Mr. Trump promised to take a long look at what Hillary had done. What's your take on the appointment of special counsel in this case?
Well, I think it's premature to say, JD. I think the president and his advisors and probably his attorney general nominee, whoever that's going to be, they'll have to sit together and discuss this. It's not an easy issue to deal with. I think you have to look at it from a political perspective. You have to look at it from a realistic perspective. I think it's going to be up to the president-elect and let him make a decision down the road. But I think it's premature for anyone to call that shot right now.
6 days have passed since the election, and protesters continue to take to the streets. In fact, this morning, we're treated to a scene coming out of Los Angeles with school kids leaving their high schools to march around protesting the election of Donald Trump. Now, someone with whom you used to work pretty closely, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, over the weekend said a whole lot of these protesters are professional agitators. Let's look and listen to what Mayor Giuliani had to say.
I'm not sure these are even Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama supporters. I think these people are kind of like professional protesters. They didn't look to me like people who were, carefully studying political science and were all upset about, the ideology of the election.
It did appear in some of those big city demonstrations you had professional protesters. I don't know what's going on this morning out in L.A. on these school mornings, but even if kids are in school, they could be prompted by professional agitprop people. What is your take on all these protests, Bernie?
Well, I think they could be agitated by the professionals. They could also be agitated by the teachers. I just find it hard to believe that an entire school would be let out to go out into the street and protest. These aren't kids. These are kids that can't even vote yet, number one. Number two, I've seen the website. There's a few of them where you can sign up to be paid to go out and protest. These are professional agitators. And I think we should get away from the word protest. These are rioters. These are people that are engaged in barbaric and lawless behavior. There have been people shot and killed at these events. There have people been beaten down, millions of dollars in property damage. And if they're so worried about the communities that they want the president-elect to be involved with and to communicate with, why are they going out there and destroying them?
Well, we are going to go out there to America. Those watching us here on America Talks Live, Bernie, calling in at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. First up, from Hopac, New York, Carl is on the line. Hi, Carl.
How you doing, JD?
Fine, sir.
My question is this: why doesn't President Obama get on the news or get on the radio and squelch these protesters? I'm quite sure if the shoe was on the other foot, he would be on there condemning the protesters if it was Donald Trump.
A very valid point. That's a very valid point, Carl. Let's ask Bernie about that. Bernie, the silence thus far from the White House has been deafening concerning these protests.
You know what, JD? I'm concerned about the silence from the White House. That's one thing. But I'm also concerned about senators and congressmen that I've heard on the Sunday morning shows talking about leading the resistance, talking about leading the fight. This was a constitutional election. This isn't a coup or a takeover of the government.
Well, to that point, we think about Senator Cory Booker. In fact, why don't we listen to the slice of rhetoric he used yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press? And I want to get your direct reaction to Senator Booker.
When you have a president that is in his campaign who ran saying things that aren't just contrary to fact, but literally threatening to use presidential power in a way that would erode the rights and privileges and equality of large sections of Americans, God bless the protesters.
God bless the protesters. Now, we both know Cory Booker's a young man in a hurry. He's sorry he wasn't Hillary's pick for vice president. But this goes over the line, does it not, Bernie?
Yeah, you know, I've known Cory Booker for about 15, 16, 18 years maybe. I respect him. I've had a working relationship in Washington with him over the last 3 years on criminal justice issues. But I have to tell you, I saw that interview and I was stunned. His language, leading the resistance, leading the fight, encouraging the protests. These are people that are engaged in lawless and barbaric behavior. If I was Cory Booker and someone like him, I'd be more concerned about the damage and destruction in these communities and working with the president instead of against the president. And that's what appears he's doing. And I hope I'm wrong, but I have to tell you, in watching that interview, I was pretty shocked.
Well, let's go back to the phones now, Bernie, at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. To the borough of Brooklyn, where John has been waiting patiently. Hi, John.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine, sir.
Simple question. People do have the right to peacefully protest. But if I were to pay somebody to fly to California to do violence to an ex-business partner, an ex-wife or something like that, and they were caught, and they said, I, John from Brooklyn, paid for them to fly there, I'm criminally liable. George Soros, if he is paying people to professionally agitate, flying from one city to another, he's in violation of many federal laws. I think Mr. Kerik would say possibly RICO statutes. But the problem seems to be there's no connecting the dots. When people are arrested in Ferguson for misdemeanors or felonies, when they're arrested in Portland, Oregon for the same, or in New York City, there's no connecting of the dots between people who are arrested. If you're arrested and you live in New York and then you're arrested in Portland, Oregon, and we find out that someone paid for your airline
Right.
ticket.
I think you're making a valid point, John. Let's let Bernie react to it. Bernie, your take on what John just said.
Well, listen, I think if we make a determination that somebody's inciting these people, paying them to go out and engage in this lawless and barbaric behavior, and you know, I saw the other day, you know, 3 or 4 kids beat mercilessly a man in the middle of the street. I mean, it was horrific what I watched on the internet. If that's the case, they should be charged with a hate crime. They should be charged with the assault, charge them federally with a hate crime. They have to be held accountable. You can't go out there and engage in this kind of behavior
and to that
be
end,
let off the hook.
And to that end, Bernie, the war on cops continues. Over the weekend, Northern California, a deputy sheriff shot and killed execution style. We need to talk about that. We've got about a minute to do so. Your reaction to this and the ongoing war on cops.
Well, first, my heart goes out to the families of the sheriff's deputy that was gunned down. This was an execution, from what I understand. You know, executions of cops over the last year is up by assassinations. These are outright assassinations. They're up like 300, probably 300 more percent. 60, 70% increase in cops being gunned down. This is ridiculous. I think we have turned the tables where cops have become the target, and it's got to stop. And I think we need the leadership in the White House and in government agencies, governors, mayors. They have to support the police and let people know we're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior.
Bernie Kerik, we very much appreciate your time today from Newsmax, Washington. Straight ahead, some more of your calls. Plus, when we come back, well, we will have headlines, punchlines, and more. It's America Talks Live. Your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629.